What's up, guys? Welcome to the first official episode of the Fantasy Mafia podcast. This is the football edition. Um, I'm here with my co-host Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy. We've done podcasts before. You might have seen us on our live on Facebook. We do the Razes on there. We go live every Tuesday, or mostly every Tuesday night at 8:30, or taking questions for dynasty questions and stuff like that. But now this is the actual podcast. This is the one that you'll be able to hear on Stitcher, on Apple Podcast, on Google. We're going to have it on Spotify, on Anchor. So anywhere that you can listen to podcasts, that's where we're going to be on. As far as the audio goes, and then a video will be on YouTube so you can see our beautiful faces. So if you've heard of us before, some of the stuff might sound a little repetitive as far as like who we are, what we do, and stuff like that. But for everybody that's new, we kind of want to introduce ourselves again to you guys, talk about our page, talk about what we do, and then kind of go over some things that we're going to be talking about in the future. And as this thing goes on, this is episode one of who knows how many we're going to do.
Trillions, I would say.
Yeah, episode one of trillions. And at our trillionth episode, we're going to be giving away some free stuff, so make sure you tune in. But Jordan, I'll kick it over to you real quick. Talk about, just introduce yourself and let us know some fantasy things that you got going on in the world these days.
Yeah, so I mean, to kick it off, I'm really excited. We've already released some NBA and MLB podcasts, and those are all fun and whatnot, but I mean, NFL is my bread and butter. I think it's most people, so I'm excited to talk about some real fantasy sports here, and I hope my co-hosts from those other podcasts don't listen to this because I'm sorry in advance, but, I mean, the NFL is just fun. It's a whole different game. We just launched our page, the Fantasy Mafia, a week ago now. It was, not even, it was last Friday. Well, actually, it depends when you're listening to this, but it was last Friday, June 12th. So, we went back and forth on names quite a bit, and Mafia was one of the ones that really stuck out to us. And for me personally, I don't really want to talk about this, but you got that stupid Bills logo behind you. And, I've always liked the Bills Mafia name. And when you think of Bills fans and how intense and passionate and loyal they are, I mean, that's kind of what I think that we're aiming for here is, to have an intense fan base where we can all rally around fantasy sports and we're all
tables.
Part of that would be pretty cool. That's episode number 2, actually, if you want to tune into that. I'm going to body slam Jerry through a table. We're not that far away, so I could do it. But I mean, that's kind of the goal here. I mean, we're going to have a lot of cool stuff going on. We've already done the Razes. We have a group, too, called the Fantasy Hotspot. We're almost touching on 350 members. I just checked a few hours ago. We were at 335, I think.
It's getting there.
It's been about, only a week and a half, maybe 10 days that we've had that now. So we've got a pretty good following going. A lot of great conversation. I've been really impressed with that. People just going in there, asking their fantasy questions, getting input not only from our admins, but other people that have played for years as well. So, if you're just looking to have some nice fantasy conversation, hop onto the Fantasy Hotspot. I've been really happy so far with the progress and just seeing conversation, because that's what it's all about, And I've been in a lot of leagues, and Jerry, you've been in some of these leagues with me that are a lot of drama. But, I mean, in the end, a lot of people have big egos in fantasy sports, but I think we forget sometimes. It's just all about having conversation and having a good time. So if you want to pop into the hotspot, I think that's where it's at right now. We're going to continue to grow it to hopefully thousands and thousands over the years. This is just the beginning for us. And over the past week or so on the Mafia page, just going back to that quickly, we have our website up and running at thefantasymafia.com. We had some rankings go up today. We're planning on having different kinds of rankings every week on Wednesdays, whether it be Dynasty, Redraft. I'm sure as the season approaches, we'll get into some best ball. I mean, you name it. We're going to have everything on this page. It's going to be your one-stop shop for all things fantasy. So we have that going on. We have the podcast. I already mentioned we have an MLB, NBA, NFL. We have some NHL content that's coming out now that season's rolling. So articles, podcasts, videos, anything you could possibly ever want, all in one spot.
All in one spot. It's going to be very exciting. So throughout the course of this specific podcast, it's going to be it's going to be all fantasy football related, or just football related. Not always fantasy, but most of the time it's going to be fantasy football related, but 100% of the time it's going to be football related. We're going to get some guest people on here. Between some other podcasts that I've done, we've had a couple couple prospect players. The biggest one that I can name is Kelvin Harmon. We talked to him the year that he was getting drafted, and just asked him a few questions, and he was able to come on for 5 minutes, and that was on an old podcast that I did. But we're gonna try to get more of those guys. We're gonna try to get actual other podcasters on here. We're involved in a lot of different Facebook groups. We talk to a lot of people throughout the Facebook world, and so there's people that I'd like to get hooked up with there and talk to them. And then we're just gonna do different things like Jordan already mentioned. We'll go over our rankings on the podcast here. We'll do some different game shows and giveaways, and as this thing grows, it's just going to be one of your things to listen to while you're sitting at work and going through your 8 hour shift, and you just want to throw on a new podcast and listen to us and listen to our voices in your ears. So today's episode, we're gonna go over a couple things. Basically, we're just gonna go over what our best fantasy football moment was, just playing all the years that we've been playing, and then our worst fantasy football moment, something that we've either regretted or we've done at a time and just came back to bite us in the ass or something like
I
that.
don't know why you'd want to do that in the first episode, because going through that, I mean, a few memories popped in my head pretty quickly. I'm like, I think he's trying to get me to quit and jump ship after one episode here. I'm going to go into a deep depression after thinking about some of these.
The first step is letting it out there and trying to get over it, and I'm
I
here
haven't
for you,
accepted
Jordan.
it.
I'm
Just
here
for the
for you.
record, I haven't. Nope.
First
Nope,
step is
not good enough.
acceptance. And then we're going to talk about we're going to go over who we think could be the highest scoring player in each division. So 8 divisions, non-quarterback though. So we're not going to have any Tom Brady's or anything in this episode. So before we get started with any of that, I know Jordan, like you already introduced yourself, but about how many leagues would you say that you play in a year? And you play different types of leagues too, but how many leagues would you play in a year?
Yeah, I mean, so this question it's evolving every single
It's
day.
a little
I mean, I
loaded.
have a little bit of an issue. I mean, some people know me to have a reputation as I won't say no to a league, which is pretty accurate. And I mean, kind of going into that, the reason for me is I take it as a personal challenge. I mean, if you invite me to a league, it's almost like you're saying, hey, you can't beat me. And I'm like, oh, I mean, yes, I can. So I'm going to come into the league and dominate it the best that I can. So, I mean, the only time I do say no to a league, honestly, is if it's not for money. I mean,
Yeah.
I like playing for money. And I'm in so many now. I don't really, unless it's with good friends or, even a lot of those are for money now that I started years ago. So, I mean, I don't really mess around with free ones anymore. We spend so much time on it. I mean, I like the prize of, even if it's $100 to win the whole thing. I mean, I want to be working towards something. So this year right now, and I was just going through this, I got to get my spreadsheet going because I've added so many. Last season, I was in 17. This year, I'm in 30, and it's kind of all over the board right now. Dynasty, semi-keepers, keepers with 3 round penalties, 2 round penalties. You and I did some best balls, vampires, guillotine leagues last year. I'm doing more best ball this year. And those best ball leagues, by the way, don't count into that league total. That 30 is just strictly dynasty, redraft, and
Yep.
keep leagues. When you add in all those special leagues, I'm assuming I'm going to be touching 50 this year, which now that I was just talking about this an hour ago with a friend, and I said, you know what, now that I'm really thinking about it, and I just said that number out loud, it's going to be a lot to manage. And even when I was in 17 last year, I mean, realistically, some of my teams just aren't going to perform as well as others. There's only so much time in a day that I can dedicate I like to think I can dedicate 24 hours, but that's not only possible if I want to stay married. So I missed. I think I made it in 14 out of 17 last year, which isn't bad at all. The year before that, I made it out of 13 out of 13, which was really, I didn't think that was going to happen. But the reality is, I focus more on some teams than others. I mean, if you're having a really good season in one league, I mean, I'm putting more effort into that to make sure I make a nice run.
Yeah.
In other leagues, you just have a string of bad luck. There was one league I remember in particular. I didn't give up. I'm not playing bye week players or anything, but am I seeking out trades from every roster and every team? No. I mean, I'm making free agent moves, trying to be strategic there. But in the end, you're going to focus on your good teams, trying to build those ones up so you win some money and some championships. And, and as much as I don't like to say that I care about more leagues than others, the reality is I play in some leagues that are $200 to $500, and those ones I care a little more about than my $25 home league. As much as that's for bragging rights, I want the big bucks.
Exactly. It's the at the end of the day, it's all fun, but we're also playing for money too, or playing for something, playing for a prize, playing for money, playing for a trip to Vegas, which I think you were talking about running that league this year out of your own pocket. So can't wait to get in that one.
Yeah, I'm so excited to take everybody to Vegas.
Every single one of us. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever touched 50. I don't think I've even ever touched 40, but they're definitely getting up there. I don't count the best ball leagues either, but as you mentioned, we were in a lot of the same leagues last year. We did a lot of the trial leagues, the Vampire, the Guillotine, and we're going to be doing those again this year. And of all the leagues that you mentioned, you haven't even touched the surface of your redraft league. So a lot of your leagues that you're counting right now, you're in the 30s right now, and that's just from keepers and dynasties and stuff like that. Because those leagues just carry over to the next year, where your redrafts and hopping in some like a like a Yahoo one that's
Yeah.
on there and paid on Yahoo or whatever. That hasn't even been counted yet either. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely up there. I've started to eliminate a lot of the free leagues if I can. I know we just got in one, but it's more of a trial league again too. It's a salary cap league, so we're trying that out, seeing how that goes. But for the most part, that's pretty much my only free one. The other ones are going to be for some kind of dollar amount. Um, Best balls are always fun to do. I mean, but there's really no work done in those. You just if you have a few bucks and you want to spend and do a draft, you could do that. But
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about unmanageable too. I mean, I think you primarily play fantasy football. I don't know if I think you're in a few hockey leagues as well, but I mean, I do all of that, and then I'm in 13 baseball leagues as well.
oh
And I
yeah,
would argue that 13 baseball leagues are harder than 50 NFL. Just the day in and day out grind of the MLB season is insane. So, and I'm in a few huge leagues for that. So it's way too many, but I would never cut any of them.
no, it's I mean once you're in, you it's the fantasy mafia montage.
You
Once you're
might
in,
see
you
me
can't
start
get out.
switching.
If cut under 10 and start going crazy, it's like you need your sugar. All right, so let's jump right into what our topics are. Like I said, your best moment and your worst moment. How do you want to start this off? Do you want to start with the worst, or do you want to start with the best?
I mean, I think you always save the best for last,
Save the
but
best for last. All right. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
go ahead. Let's hear what you got.
All right. So my worst moment that I've ever done. These are both from the same league. My worst and my best. It's my home league that I run. I've been running it for about 8 9 years now. I think we're going into year 9 this year. I just it's probably my favorite league. We live draft at my house. Well, we've been live drafting at my house the last couple of years. Years prior to that, we would go out to the bar. Everybody just like I would try to get everybody there, and for the most part, we I think last year was the first year that we had all 12 of us that are in the league here, plus wives, girlfriends, kids, and all that stuff. So we had a little nice little draft party here. But um, it's that one. It's one of my favorite leagues, and the worst thing that I've ever done in this league was in 2013. Antonio Brown was a couple years into the league at this point. I traded him straight up for Nick Foles. Now, the league is it's a three keeper league. Well, up to three keepers. You don't have to keep three players, but you can keep up to three players. You can't keep no more than one of the same position. So if you were keeping another wide receiver, I couldn't keep Antonio Brown anyways, and I don't even remember who my other wide receivers were to justify me getting rid of Antonio Brown or anybody for that matter. But
Probably way better than Antonio Brown.
no, I mean maybe at the time. I mean that year he did finish with like I don't even remember 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, a whole bunch of catches. So it was a bad move just right off the bat. But this is the year that Nick Foles ended up starting for the Eagles. He had that 7 touchdown game. He finished the season with 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So I was thinking, okay, let me get my quarterback of the next year. I think he's going to be, I think he's going to be solid. He should be starting for Philly next year. I think I have a decent running back that I could keep. I think I had Le'Veon Bell, so Le'Veon Bell is my running back, and like I said, I don't remember who my wide receiver was, but I just ended up trading Antonio Brown straight up for Nick Foles, and boy, that was I'm still recovering from that move. the next quarterback that I had, not the next quarterback after that, but like the last quarterback that I kept from that league, because now I just decided I don't even want to keep quarterbacks anymore. That hurt me so bad that I'm not even keeping quarterbacks in that league. I'd rather just draft one, but I
I'm wiping your
wipe
tears.
my tears for me. Thank you. But the last quarterback that I actually kept ended up retiring in preseason on me, so I'm done with quarterbacks in the league. I'm just going to play with no quarterbacks anymore. But despite all of his off field antics, everything that we know about Antonio Brown, he definitely had the better career up to this point than Nick Foles, and Nick Foles is still in the league.
That's bold.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let me ask you, do you realize what you've done? I mean, the reason that Antonio Brown lost his mind is because of you. I mean, are you willing to accept that?
He got a notification on his phone saying that somebody in Buffalo, New York, traded him away, and just all downhill from there.
Well, that's depressing.
Started getting into
So,
fights in camp and yelling at his quarterback. And I'm sorry, Antonio Brown. And then you kind of hurt me last year when you declined to come to the Bills, so we're even.
well, I mean, why I wouldn't want to go to the Bills either. I'd rather go insane too. I would. I mean, this is a serious question. I think I'd rather be in prison than play for the Bills.
Whoa, whoa. All right, so that's the end of the show.
That was fun while it lasted. It was a good what? We had a good 10-minute run. I mean, so for me, I as we went through this, and I don't know what this says about me as a person, but I the negative moments stick out way more to me than the positive ones, and I think maybe it's just because I'm harsh on myself. And when we get to the positive ones, I'm probably going to say some stuff that sounds a little egotistical, but whatever. We're talking about the good moments. So I'm going to touch on a few negative ones here. There's two championship games I'll talk about first. The first one, they're actually in back-to-back seasons. And back in the day, and I'll tell you a little later on here how I started playing fantasy because it's kind of a cool story. But so my dad and I used to have a big rivalry with me growing up, and it's called the Jikas League. It was our family's league, and I've been in it for years and years. And him and I, it seemed like we're always in the championship against one another. And I think the first three times him and I played in the championship, I lost to him, and that was the running joke for years. And family barbecues weren't fun; they were just depressing. I just had to hear it from everybody how I couldn't beat my dad and I couldn't take the throne from him. But there was back-to-back years. The one we were in a league where defenses didn't score a lot of points. He had the Bears defense in one of their huge seasons, and in the championship game, they scored like 60 something points. Devin Hester had a few return touchdowns. I think Charles Tillman might have had one or two touchdown or interceptions return for just a huge game. And I would say on average, defenses were scoring like 8 to 10 points. And I essentially I think that the Bears defense almost scored more than my entire team. So I've always had a distaste for the Bears defense since then. So I don't know if I've drafted them since then. I really doubt it. So that one really hurt for me. The second one was the year after. It was a cool story, though. My dad and I were the 7 and 8 seeds in that league. The 1 through 8 seeds made it. We were the top two scorers in the league, but we just had terrible luck. So we went into the playoffs as the 7th and 8th seeds. We ended up both going through, meeting in the championship that year. But I was winning up until Monday Night Football, and I'm sure there's lots of championship stories like this. It actually might have been Sunday Night Football. But the Patriots were, I don't even remember who they were playing. They were absolutely destroying somebody by like 40 points. And for whatever reason, it's the fourth quarter. Tom Brady, my dad had Tom Brady and Corey Dillon, who were, for whatever reason, still in the game. And I'm just like screaming at the TV, why in the world is Tom Brady and Corey Dillon, who was a good back in his day, why are they still on the field when they're up by 40? And I was up by like 1 point. And I'm like, just take them out. And then Tom Brady threw a little dump-off pass to Corey Dillon for like 10 yards. And then right after that play, Corey Dillon and Tom Brady got pulled out, and I lost the championship by less than a point.
Wow.
And I was just like, are you kidding? I mean, and you're just watching it in real time because, I mean, not that league wasn't for a ton of money. I think the winner got like $250 or whatever. But, I mean, it was just more, especially when it's with your family member. Like, I played my mom in the championship before. It's just always for pride when you do that. So I just remember watching it with my dad and just watching the screen. And, I think from there, that's when I started getting really addicted because I didn't want to feel that pain anymore.
And never went to a barbecue again.
Nope, that was the last time. And then my dad left and it was all downhill from there.
Haven't eaten a hamburger since.
And there's different reasons for that, but that's for a story for a later time. Let's see, and then I'll go to another one. This one is there's two. I'll talk about a trade that I had, and then just the season in its entirety. And this is one of the things that have still escaped me. I haven't had a completely undefeated season yet, and that really bothers me. And I'm hoping that I can still make that happen eventually. There's one league in particular. It's a 3-keeper league this year. My 3 keepers going 2 QB league going into this season are Mahomes, McCaffrey, and Lamar Jackson. So I'm very hopeful in that league.
Good start.
But yeah, I mean, you would think so. I think that alone gets you to the playoffs.
Lamar's got the Madden curse coming his way, though.
Why would you even say that? That's fine. I'll just get RG3. RG3 magic. But so the closest that I got was in 2011. I had to go back and look up this year because it was really bothering me that much. So I went into Yahoo and went through the old league history. But it was in 2011. I had an undefeated regular season, and I mean, I really dominated that regular season. This was the first Superflex league I ever played in, and I mean, we all play in Superflex leagues now. You say Superflex, and really, I would say a good majority of people know what that is. But back in 2011, we're talking about 10 years ago, that was just a new thing. Yahoo added it in as a setting, and I'm like, yeah, we'll try playing with this Superflex thingy. And then so we added the Superflex that season. It was Cam Newton's rookie year. I had Cam Newton and Aaron Rodgers as my 2 QBs, and they finished as QB 1 and 2. I had Michael Turner, who had a big year that year. Roddy White and Hakeem Nicks were 2 top 10 receivers. I just had a very deep team. For the most part, Newton and Rodgers carried me, but I think I scored – it was something insane. I think it was 450 points more than anyone else in the regular season. So then we get to the playoffs. It's once again – this is why I hate when the 1 through 8 seeds make it. The 8 seed, who was 5-8, not even a good record, snuck in at 5-8. I had by far my worst scoring week of the year, and I got eliminated from the playoffs in week 1. And I mean, that's just one of those things. And that's why if you're in any leagues with me, I'm very demanding that the top scorer in the regular season should get their money back at least, because nothing is worse than putting together a complete season like that.
Yep.
And I mean, you know how much money I got out of that? $0. And I put together an incredible season, and I managed it well. I played nice matchups. I mean, it was really a perfect regular season. And then after all that, I had one down week, and I got $0 out of it. And ever since that, it's always bothered me. And I think every league I play in, or I'm the commissioner, and I know that that's a rule now just because of that moment. And, I think I'm tearing up a little. That one hurts the most. I mean, that's...
You got tissues next to you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I should have. That was the one that really got to me. This next one I'll finish up, and I've taken too much time here, but that's okay. The last one that I have here, I wanted to talk about a trade. And I'll preface this by saying I'll have to tell you a little bit of the background because it's going to sound really stupid when I say it out loud. But, I mean, first of all, I don't trade a ton. I mean, I believe in trying to trade where you have an advantage, which sounds kind of wrong. I mean, but that's the reality of it. When you're making a trade with somebody, in my opinion, you want to win it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the kind of guy to just trade to trade. I know so many people that are like, oh, I want to trade. I'm only going to trade if, number one, I think I'm getting the better end of the deal. Number two, I really think that it helps me. So I would say in every league, maybe I make 1 to 2 trades a year. I'm more of a waiver wire guy. I'm playing matchups and streaming, and that's kind of my forte and how I win for the most part. But so this was preseason, and this was one of my good friends, Mike, who I've been playing fantasy with for, I think 15 years now. And he said he wanted to come on and talk about this, but I don't really want to talk about it with him. So preseason, I traded Alvin Kamara for Charkandrick West. And this was Alvin Kamara, sorry. I will never say his name right. I have Kamara ingrained in my brain. But, I mean, so to preface this, I had Kareem Hunt, it was also Kareem Hunt's rookie year. Kareem Hunt and Charkandrick West were fighting for the starting running back job. I was like, well, I kind of want either one of those, or I want both of them, so I have the Chiefs starting running back. So I texted Mike. I was like, hey, I want Charkandrick West. He's like, all right, give me Alvin Kamara. And I'm like, I don't really even know much about this guy. I took him kind of as a late-round pick. And, I mean, let me also say the worst part about this is a keeper league with a 3-round penalty. So I took him, I think it was in the 16th round. So then the next season, Mike got to keep him for a 13th, then a 10th, then a 7th. I think he's still keeping him. So I just have to stare at that every single season. But yeah, I mean, so I traded Kamara, who ended up having a huge rookie season. I think he finished sixth overall, I want to say, that season. I did have Kareem Hunt. I didn't get him in the trade, but Kareem Hunt also had a huge season and had 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns, something like that. So it turned out all right. But I will say the positive in that story is, funny enough, I didn't even realize this till I looked at the history because I had to see what year I made that trade. But I actually played Mike in the Super Bowl that year and beat him, which is kind of funny actually to see how that turned out. Him and I, that's the new rivalry in that league is Mike and I. We play a lot in that championship. But that's kind of ironic that after that trade we ended up meeting.
That's some little string of bad luck there. I was just reading through yours, and I just couldn't wait to you actually said it on the podcast. And yeah, I mean, it's
Charkandrick West.
I
I mean, does
think
that guy even have 200 career rushing yards?
I think mine still takes the cake. I mean, Kamara's still in the league. Obviously, he's still drafted as one of the top 5, 6 running backs in leagues even today. But to trade for a quarterback in a single quarterback league, for a guy who was basically the top wide receiver in the 2010s, I think that was just ridiculous. And then
That was one of our trivia questions. He
yeah,
had what, 10, or what was it, five top 10 finishes in half a decade.
yeah, I think it was something like that. I mean, he was up there a lot of the years. But I mean, yours are definitely pretty bad. I'm not going to take anything away from you. Yours are pretty bad.
I was gonna say at least both of your guys involved in that trade are still in the league, but I guess Antonio Brown technically isn't. So
Well, he
I
never
guess
technically retired, so
so. I mean, I don't think
he's there.
Charkandrick West is in the league unless he's on a practice squad, or he seems like a guy that would have played in the XFL. We covered the XFL. I don't remember him there, but
Yeah,
he. I don't think he's in the league. He's probably playing in the Canadian Football League.
who knows? But if you anybody that has Alvin Kamara, you could get him for Charkandrick West if you're listening
That's a
to us.
great deal.
Um, so let's go into our best fantasy football moments, and I wanted to try to keep these episodes around like 45 minutes or so. So we'll have to think about what we want to do with the next segment because we're already at 27 minutes. Um,
I
but
won't talk anymore. I'm sorry.
no, no, talk as much as you want. Just don't talk as much as you want. So my best moment that I had, again, like I mentioned earlier, this was the same league. This was the championship game, 2017. So the year that you had your blunder where you traded Kamara for West, I had my best fantasy football moment. So I'm in the championship game against one of my good buddies. This whole league is good buddies and friends, and my wife is in this league too, and her sister's in this league. So it's a bunch of people that just really know each other, and through each other, we all know each other
Who
and just
won
talk
that league
shit.
last year?
Last year, definitely not me. In 2017, I did. Um, I don't remember who won it last year. That's a good
I thought it
question.
was your wife. I thought she commented on one of our lives that
Oh,
Aaron
maybe she
Jones
did.
won it
Yeah, I
for.
think it was last year she did win it, and then her sister won a couple of years too. Her sister won 2 years in a row. Actually, I think at the beginning of
So
our
when are
our
they coming on
franchise.
the pod?
I don't want to get my
I want
job
to talk
taken.
to some real experts.
I don't want my job to be taken. So 2017 Week 16 championship game because that's the only week to play championship games, and if you play Week 17, then you're a chump until next year when they go into Week 18. So going into Monday Night Football, I was up by less than a point. It's a PPR league, and I had nobody going, and it was already a low scoring game to begin with. I think we're in the mid 80s, maybe low 90s between us. And my opponent had Michael Crabtree. He played for the Raiders at the time against the Eagles. I think this game was actually on Christmas Day. It was Monday night, Christmas Day. All Crabtree basically needed was a catch for any yardage. He could have had a 0 yard catch. He could have had a 20 yard catch. All he needed was to get his hands on the ball. In rushing fashion, it would have had to been 10 yards, but he just needed to get a catch. And I would lose because I had nobody. He had one person. He ended up. I mean, long story short, he ended up with 0 catches on 3 targets. I ended up winning the championship, and my buddy was livid. Like we're sitting there because it's the only game on at the time. I'm in a group message with a couple of them in the league, and just like the whole time, it's like he only had 3 targets, so it really wasn't a lot to talk about as far as targets go. But it's like they're looking for like I forgot what number Michael Crabtree was at the time when he was with the Raiders, but like we're all looking on the field like, where's Crabtree? Where's he lined up? Who's on him? What kind of routes he's running? And then as they show the play going, it's like, okay, was that him? Was that him running that slant? Was that him running that out? Why didn't he throw that way? What's going on here? Derek Carr, you suck. And it's all like, it was just like, finally when the clock hit 000 or 4 zeros, I was like, it was my first championship in this league, and it was such a relief. But I mean, just one catch from, I think he was the number one for the Raiders at the time too. They didn't have any Darren Wallers, and they obviously didn't have Antonio Brown or anything like that. So
Darius Hayward Bay.
yeah, yeah. Okay, maybe he was the number two. No, but I don't know. I mean, they might have Jordy Nelson actually, but he was a bum too. But
That's old sucky Jordy Nelson.
yeah, that's post Green Bay Jordy Nelson. Yeah, I mean, just one catch would have done it for me, or would have done it for him, and I lucked out. So it was a lot of luck, but it ended up getting me my championship, getting me my money back, and some bragging rights at least until the next season.
So I'll go to mine, and I kind of briefly touched on it before, but I'll kind of just give a quick background on how I started playing fantasy. I think it's kind of my most, cherished or my best memory from fantasy in general, and a little funny. I mean, because I've won a lot of championships. I honestly don't think any of the championships that I've won, anything really crazy has happened. They've been pretty standard chalk championships. So I started playing fantasy football in 2003. And yes, that's a long time ago, and I'm really not that old. So I started playing when I was 8 years old, actually. And we used to always have it at my mom and dad's house, and we would have a picnic, barbecue, do it in the back deck, whatever. And one of the guys didn't show up, and I usually attended it, and I just hung out and ate food and whatnot, and that's kind of how I started getting into football back then. So I'm a big Rams fan, and that was back in the Greatest Show on Turf days, so that's kind of why I'm a Rams fan, which is kind of random because I'm in New York, but I grew up watching Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk, all those guys. So a guy didn't show up, and they said, okay, you want to draft a team? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I drafted a team at 8 years old. I really didn't know anything about fantasy football, so my strategy that year was I only took players that were on bird teams because I really liked birds. So long story short, I had a good team. I can remember a few guys from that team. Back then, too, I didn't play on Yahoo or anything like that. My dad and I used to keep track of it on literally a pad of paper, and then we would email out the results every week. And so that's kind of how I started playing. So long story short, I had Jamal Lewis that year. If you go back to 2003, what did Jamal Lewis do? He rushed for 2,000 yards. He was on the Baltimore Bird Ravens. I had Sean Alexander from the Seattle Birdhawks. He had
Jamal Anderson.
Yeah, he had 17 touchdowns. Sean Alexander went through a crazy stretch, and that was one of those years where he had like 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns, something crazy like that. Matt Hasselbeck was with the Seahawks at the time. He was my quarterback, had one of his better years there then. So I won the championship, though. So I won my first championship at 8 years old, picking players from bird teams. And I think that maybe this podcast is irrelevant when I think about it, and you should just go out there and you should pick guys that play for bird teams, and you might win.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to start picking some wild animals, pick all the Bengals and the Bears, and probably put together a losing team because they're not that good. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like Bengals and Bears.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, if you did that, I mean, birds are very specific. And I mean, I used to have a weird thing with bird watching, so I was in that phase then. And I mean, if you went with animals in general, I mean, that's easy enough because then you have the Panthers and you have all the bird teams and the Bears and Bengals. You could put together a solid squad.
I think you could put together a better squad than non-animals. That's we should do that.
Is that a podcast?
That's our next episode.
Animal teams versus non-animal teams. Who wins?
Mark it down. What's up, guys? Real quick, I just want to talk about our sponsor, 3D Comics. They are local here in Buffalo, New York, but they do a lot of their business online and through Facebook, so check them out at 3D Comics on Facebook. If you don't know who they are, basically they are a comic book store that sells custom comic book covers, actual comic books. They sell custom Funko Pops. I just ordered one, so I wish I had it here with me now. It's not ready yet, but I will be. It will be on one of these future broadcasts, and I'll show you. It's a remark of Josh Allen jumping over Anthony Barr from his rookie year, and I got sent a picture of it, and it looks awesome. If I could bring it up on my phone and show you, but I don't know how the quality would be, but it definitely looks awesome on the picture. So I know that it's going to look even more awesome when I see it in real life, and it'll be displayed in the background for me when I have it for future episodes. But yeah, 3D Comics. It's owned by one of my buddies that I used to work with at another job, and he decided to go open up his own store, and it's if you're local here in Buffalo, you could go check it out in Lancaster. But if not, you can definitely go onto his Facebook page, 3D Comics, or search him on eBay and just check him out. I mean, if you know anybody that's a comic book collector, a Marvel, DC collector, anything like that, superheroes, villains, this is the place to go. So we're going to talk about who we think potentially could be the highest scoring player in each division, non QB. Um, so it looks like we have a pretty looks like we have a lot of the same players, but we'll go through. You mention yours, I'll mention mine, maybe a little bit of why, and then so a lot of our scoring and most of our leagues that we're in. Just to preface it, we are most of our stuff is PPR, full PPR.
Ooh.
What do you want to do? A standard?
I mean, I'm one of the only people probably in the entire world that still like standard leagues. I'm still in a few, which every time I say standard leagues, people usually boo me, but I prefer them.
I don't know if I'd say prefer. I mean, I'm not opposed to them. If somebody's running a standard league, I'll play it. Just obviously it switches up the draft strategy a little bit. You're not going out and grabbing Julian Edelman or Jarvis Landry earlier than you would, but um, I'm definitely not against them. But yeah, I mean, most of our rankings that we do, a lot of like even your daily fantasy, your DraftKings, your FanDuel, those are all PPR. So we kind of stick with along those lines. If you want standard rankings, if you want anything like that, I mean, feel free to reach out to us. So we could put our list together for standard. Not a lot will change. Definitely doesn't change for quarterbacks because they don't really matter in that kind of scoring. But unless you got Nick Foles who's catching touchdown passes, but and you traded Antonio Brown for him. But if you want some standard rankings, we can definitely put some together. Or I'm sure Jordan wouldn't mind doing that and writing long paragraphs about them.
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally too, when you play in 50 leagues, you need some spice in your life. I mean, if every single one was the same with the same scoring, I think that I would jump off a bridge.
So we need to get you to get a whole bunch of leagues with the same scoring so we can see that bridge happening.
We'll
The table's going to be at the bottom of it.
live stream it.
Jump through a table off a bridge. All right, so let's start here. We'll start with the AFC North. Who is the player that you think could lead the division in points, PPR scoring in the AFC North?
I mean, so I kind of went back and forth between this. I wanted to say Chubb, maybe because I just wanted to say Chubb, but I mean, I think with Kareem Hunt there, I mean, it impacts him. I'm a big Georgia fan too, so I've liked Nick Chubb's game for a few years, and I'm glad to see he's made a nice impact so far in his career. But I mean, I just can't put him ahead of Joe Mixon, unfortunately, because of Kareem Hunt. I mean, and the numbers don't lie. I mean, Nick Chubb was the 24th back in the league when Kareem Hunt came back, so he started to slowly lose some touches. And when you're talking PPR, Nick Chubb has good receiving ability, but he's not going to have as many opportunities with all the weapons there and with Kareem Hunt taking a lot of those touches out of the backfield. So I have Joe Mixon. I'm not as big on Joe Mixon as other people. I just want to throw that out there, but I can't really. Other contenders would be Juju, Tyler Boyd. I really like this year. I guess you could throw AJ Green in there, but I'm gonna stick with Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I mean, and Mixon, I was kind of between Mixon and Chubb too. I ultimately went with Chubb, and I mean the being RB 24 for the last 8 games that Kareem Hunt was in there does scare me a little bit, but at the same time, I think that a lot of it was Kareem Hunt was on a 1 year contract, and I know they brought him back,
Sounds
but
like he still is.
well, I mean, he was on a 1 year contract last year. It was 1 year, like 1.1 million too. So low risk, low reward, or low risk, high reward. And they brought him back, and which is that's the surprising part to me was that they brought him back because I thought they wanted to just wear him out, get what they can out of him. You know, you got some young legs there. He was out the year before. Bring him in, kind of rest Chubb a little bit if they had a playoff run. Have Hunt in there and get him there, and then have Chubb and Mixon, or I keep on saying Mixon, have Chubb and Hunt as kind of like a 1-2 punch. But now this year with Hunt back for all 16 games and Chubb there too, I don't think Chubb is going to finish RB 24 because
I don't think so
I think
either.
they're going to have a better split now because you're not going to wear Hunt into the ground, and at the same time Nick Chubb is probably the most purest runner in that entire division, not just in that on that team, but he's probably the most purest runner in that entire division, ahead of Joe Mixon, ahead of James Conner, and I just think that Hunt's gonna be involved heavily in the pass game, but I think that on the ground, and if if Baker Mayfield grows into a better third year quarterback and gets better with his receivers with Odell and Jarvis Landry, then I think that Chubb overall is going to have a much better season too because that run game could get going. They did improve the line a little bit, and that's the one thing that does scare me about Mixon. And every time we talk, we're always talking about the Bengals O line. Mixon has all the talent in the world, but it's always that. I mean, he has to have a line to run behind. He's not going to do everything by himself. But and the Browns line isn't it's not bad at all. I think that he'll be out there in more red zone situations, and you'll get your 6 points from the touchdowns, and I think it's gonna boost his points up a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the split is more down the middle this year for the full season. With Kevin Stefanski there now, I wouldn't be surprised if Chubb had a Dalvin Cook kind of season with the Vikings last year. So, and I mean, actually, the Browns' offensive line, I'm going to say this out loud, but I think by the end of the year, that we'll be talking about them as a top 5 unit. PFF usually comes out with their offensive line rankings,
Mm-hmm.
and I really think that the Browns will be top 5 by the end of the season. I mean, they added Jedrick Wills in the draft. They actually got Jack Conklin, which a lot of people didn't talk about, but he's arguably, I'd say a top 5 right tackle in the entire NFL. So they actually have a really, really nice line too, which a lot of people don't really consider the Browns. I don't think people say good offensive line and the Browns in the same sentence very frequently. I mean, they had Joe Thomas forever, but really he was by himself.
You don't really say good and Browns in the same sentence that
Yeah,
much, but
that's fair.
they're changing. I mean, last year was a lot of hype. This year, I think like they're going to come back down to earth, but they're going to be a better team overall. I think that we're not going into this season thinking that the Browns are going to win the division after not winning the division for however long it's been. This year, you're going in there like, okay, the Browns are still the same Browns, and now they're going to impress. And I think it all starts with Chubb in the backfield and Baker Mayfield taking that next step. Next, we got the AFC East,
AFC
the best
East.
division.
The best of them. Okay. Well, I mean, there's not that many contenders in this division. I mean, I can't really see anyone from the Patriots doing it. I mean, when you go to the Bills, you're probably gonna say a Bill because you're a homer.
I'm not the homerist. I'm a little homer, but not the homerist.
Okay, yeah, okay, sure, sure, sure. I mean, I will say that, I mean, I loved Devin Singletary. I'm a little depressed that Zach Moss went there. I was really wanting Devin Singletary to get a full year of just him being the bell cow back. And I know he's a smaller guy, but I would have really enjoyed seeing that. I still think he's an underdog candidate to win this award that we're giving out right now. But for me right now, it's still Le'Veon Bell. I think once again, similar to what we just talked about with the Browns and what I said with them improving their offensive line, the Jets have kind of made some sneaky transactions in improving their offensive line. And when you look at a lot of the metrics of their offensive linemen, they're actually very talented run blockers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that their pass protection is going to improve much, but you can tell what they're trying to do. And, not only when someone signs a lineman, you're like, oh, okay, they're focusing on the offensive line, but I mean, within the offensive line, linemen have strengths and weaknesses, and almost all across their line, their strength is run blocking. So to me, that says they're really trying to commit to the run this year. So I think Le'Veon Bell is going to have a really nice bounce back season. And I don't like saying that out loud. I think Le'Veon Bell kind of gave up last season, and I know some people say that's not fair to say, but I didn't really see him. I saw him more when he was running routes. He ran some routes, and he was like walking. I'm like, okay. I mean, I know the Jets, they weren't actually as terrible as you think. They were 7-9 last year. I mean, people talk about the Jets like they haven't won more than 3 games in 10 years, but they were 7-9 last year, which is actually respectable. So I think they're going to commit to the run a lot this year. I don't trust Adam Gase. I've called him the black hole a few times for fantasy production, but I think they're going to commit to the run, and I think Le'Veon Bell's got one more good season in him.
And I think that's probably the reason why I wouldn't go with anybody from the Jets is because of Adam Gase. They're just not on the field enough to put together that kind of fantasy production that you want to be the best in the division. You're right. I am going to go with a Buffalo Bill. I'm going with Stephon Diggs here, the newest member of the Buffalo Bills, the wide receiver. I mean, I think number one, he comes in and I think he's the most talented receiver in the division off the bat. I know
It's
Parker.
not saying much.
I know Parker had that year last year, and Preston Williams had the beginning of the year last year, where they could be a nice duo there. John Brown and Stephon Diggs could be a nice duo in that division too, but there's video, and I know that Josh Allen isn't the only one doing this. I mean, plenty of quarterbacks are working with their wide receivers, but there's video with Josh Allen working with Stephon Diggs down in Florida, and they just seem to be on. I mean, there's no pads, there's no defense, so everything is all just speculation right now. But they just seem to be getting along, and they're building a chemistry there together. Stephon Diggs is one of the better route runners in the entire league. He's got nice, quick feet. He does have some speed to him too. So where Josh Allen can throw the ball down the field, he's got to be accurate. I mean, that's the biggest thing, and that's been his biggest flaw just coming out of college too, is his accuracy. But he's got the strength. He's got the athleticism. He's just got to work with his receivers, get the timing down, get his accuracy better. And if he can do that, then I think Stephon Diggs or even John Brown has a chance to put up some major points this year. I mean, it's going to be hard to say both of them, but if I had to choose one, I would say Stephon Diggs. I mean, they went out, they're paying him whatever Minnesota gave him. I think it was 12 mil a year, so it's not steep by any means, but he's still getting paid some hefty bucks to catch balls here in Buffalo.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly like Stephon Diggs' fit with the Bills. The only reason I wouldn't have him as the highest score is he's not really a PPR monster kind of guy. He's a downfield threat, which I think fits well with Josh Allen. And I just quickly want to mention, I'm trying to mention quickly just a underdog candidate. I actually think Jordan Howard's going to be an underdog candidate to take this award. I think if the Dolphins commit to the run, and I think Matt Breida is going to get a share of receptions, but we've seen some really nice years from Jordan Howard, and it's once again I've seen a lot of improvements on the Dolphins' offensive line, and if they decide to commit to Jordan Howard, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a nice season.
They did not know how to use him in Chicago. I mean, there was so many times I had Jordan Howard a couple years in a row, and they'd be down inside the 5, and Cohen's in there. Like, why don't you have your big body back in there? Like, just
Yeah, Matt Nagy, in my opinion, likes to get cute. That's what I always say. Sean McVay's the same way with the Rams. Sometimes I'm like, just you gotta score points, buddy. I mean, you don't need to do all this fancy. Oh, Tariq Cohen's going to take the snap and then throw it to the crowd, and then the crowd throws it back to him. Then he does a backflip in the end. No, I mean, you just got to get in the end zone. You don't need to get cute. You have a huge back. Just get in the end zone.
the only thing that scares me with Jordan Howard, and you already counter argued it with my first guy, was is the split with him and Breida. But at the same time, you could basically say what I said about Chubb and Hunt. So we won't get into that argument right now. The next one is the AFC West.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of nice options here. I mean,
All
I'm
of them for
probably
one
gonna.
team.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, but I mean, I think I'm gonna end up picking a running back probably for every single one of these. I'm a big running back guy, as you guys will find out as we do more and more episodes. I mean, I could probably deal with not taking a wide receiver till like the 8th round. That's just how I roll. I've kind of went back and forth on this one. I'm pretty high on Austin Eckler this year. I was really down on him last year, and he proved me wrong. So I think he's going to have a nice season. If I was really confident Allaire was going to get the touches for the majority of the season, which I'm still semi-confident, but I don't think confident enough to give him this award. So I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs. And it was interesting. I wrote an article about Josh Jacobs a few months ago for another page. And the Raiders were 6-4 when he went over 100 total scrimmage yards. So the Raiders kind of went along as Josh Jacobs performed, and I think John Gruden kind of realizes that. He's been public in saying that he wants to get Jacobs more involved in the pass game, which, that could be coach speak. That's one of those, I don't know, is it coach speak? Maybe, maybe not. But if he is more involved in the passing game and he can get 40 to 50 receptions, I mean, all bets are off. To me, that he has the ability to be a top 5 back. I think he's one of those sneaky picks to sneak into the top 5 for me this year. So I'm going to hand it to Josh Jacobs.
All right, and Josh Jacobs is going to run it into the end zone after you hand it to him. Um,
Oh,
I'm going to go, and this is probably my surprise out of all of them. And I know you're seeing these right in front of you, but I'm going with Cortland Sutton. KC has a lot of options there. Oakland or Vegas now, Josh Jacobs, they got some good options there. The Chargers have some good options there. So why am I going to go with the Denver Bronco? I just
no
think
idea.
I just think that I think Drew Lock makes a huge leap this year. They have, and the one argument that you can make is and we say this a lot on our live podcast, but they have a lot of mouths to feed out there in Denver. I just think that Cortland Sutton he is their alpha. He's their number one. They did go out and draft Jerry Jeudy, but Sutton is going to be the guy because he did work with Locke last year. Sutton is going to be the guy that he's going to go to. He's going to get Jeudy involved. He's going to get it down to Noah Fant. He's going to pass it to his backs and Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. But I think that Sutton, they started to build a little bit of chemistry last year. I definitely I like his game. I like the way that he plays. I just think that I mean, the chalk answer here is picking somebody from the Chiefs, and I didn't really want to go that way. There's just so many from the Chiefs to choose from, and it's like, how can you narrow it down to one? I mean, Kelsey's probably going to be your top 1 or 2 tight end, and you got Watkins, who was a top 4 pick in the draft, with Mahomes, he's been pretty well. Tyreek Hill he's one of the best receivers in the league, but I just think that, I mean, am I going to be wrong on this one? Probably, but I think that Cortland Sutton definitely has all the opportunity in the world to be one of the top wide receivers, not even just in that division, but in the entire league. Just if he could if him and Drew Lock can just get on the same page together and continue to build what they started to build last year, I mean, that Denver offense could be fun to watch for years.
Yep.
Anything on Sutton, or do you want to go to the next?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see. I mean, I like Drew Lock. I like what I saw from him last year. And one of the things I really liked is it's not fantasy relevant, but the team really rallied around Drew Lock. You could see it, like the whole team was having fun. I mean, they
Yeah.
were winning, but you saw guys just like they liked playing for Drew Lock. I read a lot into stuff like that, the intangibles that maybe, it doesn't directly show up on the stat sheet, but it does because anyone that's worked in a toxic work environment before, I mean, you just know like it sucks. And it's the same concept. I mean, that's their work environment. And when you like the leaders on your team, it makes a world of difference. So I'm interested to see how that entire offense shakes out because we mentioned all the weapons they have. I mean, it's hard to predict. I mean, are they going to be run heavy? Are they going to be pass heavy? Are they going? I think they should be balanced. I mean, they have a nice underrated offensive line. So I'm interested to see how it shakes out. I mean, Jerry Judy's very talented. So I'm looking forward to watching it, honestly.
I mean, you can't have too much fun, but at the same time, you can't be like too strict. And I think the one exception
They're
was,
winning though.
yeah, the one exception I think is New England, with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They were all business, but I mean, they won. So it's like, if you want to win championships, you're going to go play with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. But if you wanna have fun and get paid to play football but also have a successful career, then you want to play with guys like, I mean, you'd want to play with like a coach like Mike Tomlin, or play with a quarterback like Drew Lock, or somebody like that. So yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what you said. Sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to say something kind of crazy out loud just because I feel like it. I mean, from what I saw last year and just the way that he slings the ball, it reminded me a little bit of Brett Favre, which I know I'm not saying that he is Brett Favre, but I just remember watching Brett Favre growing up. I mean, people loved playing with him like he was having a good time, and
Yeah.
I think Drew Lock's similar to that. He struggled with his accuracy sometimes, but so did Brett Favre. As great as everybody wants to talk about how Brett Favre was, I mean, he was very accurate at times, and he was a gunslinger. And I saw a little bit of that with Drew Lock last year.
Well, yeah, and just off the field, just on the sideline, you saw Drew Lock a lot on the sidelines, just like the music going in the stadium, bopping back and forth, and singing the or lip syncing the songs there, and it was just fun to watch. And I mean, Buffalo plays Denver this year, so that'll be the only game that I'm rooting against Denver. But I think the rest of the year, I'm going to be a semi Denver fan because that offense is going to be fun. Um, the AFC South. Who do you got here for the AFC South?
So I thought about the guy that you have written down. Yeah, I've talked about him several
And I'm going
times.
to use your point too.
I good. You like that point, don't you?
Yep.
Um, so I mean, other candidates here. You have Leonard Fournette. I don't trust anybody on the Jaguars' offense, so I'm not gonna go with Fournette. I like AJ Brown. I don't like Derrick Henry. I mean, he'll get his points. Don't get me wrong, but in a PPR league, so I'm gonna go with an underdog here, and I'm gonna go with a rookie and say Jonathan Taylor. I really think that the Colts didn't. I mean, I think they traded up to use Jonathan Taylor. I like Marlon Mack, don't get me wrong, but Jonathan Taylor, I think, is their future and their present. So I think they're going to feed him a lot. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a huge rookie season. So I think he's an underdog candidate to do it, and I think they're going to commit to the run game more this year. He'll get. I wouldn't be surprised to see him with 50 receptions, 13, 14, 1,500 total yards and 10 plus touchdowns. So I think he's in for a good season. Now, obviously, if they decide to split it up with Marlon Mack a little more, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I just think as much as I like Marlon Mack, and he's a starting running back, don't get me wrong, but Jonathan Taylor is he's way more talented than Marlon Mack, and I think they're in a win now mode. They didn't sign Phillip Rivers to a 1-year deal to have a losing season.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to commit to the best players that they have on the field.
They got the offensive line to do it. That's the only thing that scares me is Marlon Mack. But we talk about it with Baltimore, or we have talked about it with Baltimore, where they got a whole bunch of running backs back there. But come camp time, I mean, who knows? Like we could see Gus Edwards on his way out the door. We could even see Marlon Mack on his way out the door this year too.
I think he could get traded. Yeah.
Traded, released. I mean, I don't know what they would save in cap or if he's got a dead cap hit or anything like that. But we could definitely see something like that and kind of open the door for Jonathan Taylor and maybe Hines catching the ball out of the backfield. So I saw you had my guy listed down here too. I'm going to go with David Johnson here. And like I said, I was going to use your point. They didn't trade DeAndre Hopkins and get David Johnson in return to not use him. I mean, Bill O'Brien, he's basically on the hot seat right now. He's made some pretty dumb moves. They have. I know he's not the one that's necessarily signing the contracts and offering the contracts out there, but they have Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has a contract that's coming up soon. I think it's after next year. And if Bill O'Brien's there, who knows if Deshaun Watson's going to stay there? I mean, they're not really giving him much help. They went out and got Brandon Cooks. They went out and got Randall Cobb. I mean, Will Fuller still, when he's on the field, he's good. It's staying on the field that's his problem. They still have Kenny Stills there too, but their biggest thing that they've been missing, with or without DeAndre Hopkins, there was a running back. They really had. I mean, Lamar Miller was okay, but he's always been a little bit injury prone too. David Johnson comes in, and he's a couple of years removed from being the top running back that he was. I think what was it, 2016. 2015, 2016. And then he had a couple injury-riddled seasons and then kind of had his job taken over by Kenyon Drake last year. But you don't trade a wide receiver like DeAndre Hopkins. There was some more involved in that trade, some draft picks and maybe another player or two. But you don't basically trade DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and not use David Johnson. And they also went out and got Laramie Tunsil last year. So while he isn't the whole line. They definitely improved that offensive line last year. They improved in the draft last year too with some project players, so they might even be ready to go this year. And I don't remember if I'm sure they drafted some O-line this year too, but I mean, just between all the moves that they made, I think David Johnson he has a good opportunity there to return to even like 75% of the form that he was a couple of years ago. He really doesn't have a lot of competition behind him. They still have Duke Johnson there, who's more of a pass catcher. But overall, I mean, we already know the talent that David Johnson is. As long as he can stay on the field, he has every opportunity to be a top 5 running back again.
Yeah, I mean, so just to play devil's advocate quickly here against my own point, I mean, maybe Bill O'Brien is that stupid. I mean, to trade for him and not use him. So I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possible. I don't believe that, but just to play devil's advocate, I mean, who knows? Bill O'Brien hasn't really proved to be the most talented decision maker here, so maybe he actually uses Duke Johnson more all of a sudden. But yeah, I mean, I like David Johnson. I don't think he has a lot of competition. I am a little worried about the offensive line. Deshaun Watson's got absolutely destroyed in his career so far. They've improved a little bit, but
Yeah.
I still think not enough where I'm confident in their offensive line. I think they're still probably a bottom 10 or so unit in the NFL. So I'm not 100% confident, but I think he's going to get touches. I mean, fantasy's all about volume and opportunity, and David Johnson's going to have that.
I mean, the only thing like keeping Bill O'Brien there is that if the division's been weak, they've been getting to the playoffs with like 9-7 records, and then
Yep.
Deshaun Watson kind of came in and turned them around and got them into the playoffs with 11-5 and 12-4 records. So I mean, Bill O'Brien's not doing any of the work, but it's like the winning records and getting into the playoffs is what keeping his job
Yep.
there.
I mean, do you think they would pull the trigger on him quick enough if they missed the playoffs to get rid of him?
If they missed it, I mean, if they miss it this year, then I think so. If they make it this year and then miss it the next year, maybe because like this year, it's like you're trading arguably our best player outside of Deshaun Watson, and then you go ahead and miss the playoffs. I think he could be gone this year.
I mean, it's just silly though, because they have one of the top five quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, they're ruining their opportunity in their window right now. The Texans haven't been overly successful since they've come into the NFL, but they hit on a quarterback, which is the most important position on the field. And I mean, they're blowing it. So to me, I mean, I've mentioned several times that I think head coach is the most important uh, job in the entire NFL. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl with a poor head coach. I don't care how good Deshaun Watson is. They're never, ever going to win a Super Bowl with Bill O'Brien. So
Yeah.
to me, it's either you have to pick. I mean, with Deshaun Watson's contract, you say, hey, when his contract is up, I would go to him and say, you can pick any head coach that you want if you stay here.
And they also not even like, and we're talking about trading away some really good players. Wasn't it just last year that they traded away Jadeveon Clowney too?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We should bring up that side by side sometime. But they made all those crazy trades, and now a lot of those picks have been made. So when you put side by side what they've given up versus what they've gotten, it's not good.
No comparison. All right, let's move on to the. We got four more divisions here, the whole NFC. So we got the NFC East first here. I think this was
Yeah.
pretty
I
easy
mean,
for me.
yeah. I mean, I don't really want to go against Saquon. I mean, you're going to say Saquon as well. Obviously, Zeke's going to be a candidate here as well. He is just as capable as Barkley to put up a huge season. I will say that Zeke does have a much, much better line in Dallas than the Giants do, so
Mhm.
that's definitely a check in his favor. But in the end, when Barkley's on the field, I mean, he's already proven when he's on the field, it doesn't really matter how good the offensive line is. I mean,
Yep.
he's just so incredible that, you don't really say that about many players and many running backs. Usually you need at least an okay line, but Barkley is just he hits the hole so quickly, so elusive. I mean, I can't really name one flaw that Saquon has. So as much as I want to say no because of the offensive line, I just can't. I mean, there's really nothing. If he plays a full season, he's capable of going over 2,000 total yards. I mean, I think that he could put up 20 total touchdowns if they give him the right opportunities. He just has all the upside in the world.
I think the one flaw that we can say for him is that he's with the Giants,
Yeah.
and they're a little bit of a mess, but they're getting better. I mean, just like the argument that we had with the Denver Broncos. I mean, Daniel Jones, it's another team. That's another guy that the team has been playing behind. He doesn't quite have the weapons. He's probably got the. I mean, I would say he's got the best running back out of arguably everybody outside of Christian McCaffrey, but Saquon Barkley is going to be my RB1 this year, so I'd even put him above C-Mac. But other than that, I mean, Daniel Jones doesn't have too much to work with. He's got some pretty solid wide receivers, but not the best, not anywhere near who what Drew Lock has, and but I think that more the reason has Saquon Barkley being up there. He's going to be one of the better pass catchers for Daniel Jones. Plus, we have already seen how he can do running the ball. He really doesn't need an offensive line to do what he can do. We've seen him jump over defenders, run through defenders, juke defenders. I mean, anything that you can do to a defender, he's done. And he's only played little over 1.5 years because he was hurt a little bit last year, and he's got a long career ahead of him. Running backs shelf life is a little short, but
I said that about Todd Gurley. Don't jinx.
Hope he's not on the Madden cover. Running back shelf life tends to be a little short, but I mean I think that Barkley is one of those guys that can kind of be like one of those Adrian Peterson type guys who stays in the league a little bit longer than what he's supposed to.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't really have much to say. I mean, he's Saquon. He's a generational talent. I just hope that he can stay healthy. And I just kind of mentioned quickly under my breath, I used to say that about Todd Gurley, and I still think that Todd Gurley, when he was in his prime, was a generational talent. But I mean, if you start having problems with your knees and he starts to lose even the slightest step, everyone in the NFL is talented and everybody is quick. And if you even lose one step, you can go from being dominant to, being a middle of the line running back. So I hope, just because it sucks, because I love watching players. Even if I wasn't a Rams fan, when Todd Gurley was 2 years ago, had his best season. I mean, it's just fun to watch running backs like that, because every time they touch the ball, you're like, okay, a touchdown could be coming right now. And that's how I feel with Saquon. Anytime he touches the ball, whether it's on a screen, whether it's a simple run up the middle, I just always feel like he can score a touchdown on any play, and it's exciting when they touch the ball. So as an NFL fan, I enjoy watching it.
And side note, we got to get ourselves a Saquon Barkley mini helmet to razz off. Definitely would like one of those, a college one. Another thing with him too, before we move on to the next division, is like just thinking of just doing my rankings too, and just thinking of all the handcuffs. Now, there's some really good handcuffs out there, and then there's some handcuffs that like you don't even want to touch. Him and McCaffrey are two of those handcuffs where you don't even want to touch. It's like you got Saquon Barkley, and then you got a bunch of nobodies after him. And in Carolina,
Deion Lewis.
He hasn't done anything since never. And then in Carolina, you got Christian McCaffrey, and then a bunch of nobodies after him. So it's like
Reggie Bonifant.
The teams really didn't do much to go out and kind of solidify, if they do get injured, solidify behind them, but they know what they got out of those players. And I'm interested to see who you have for the NFC South, because you can see that I don't have McCaffrey, so a little plot twist there. But we're going to go to the NFC North first.
Miles Sanders, I just have to say his name before we move on to the next division. And he's the underdog candidate.
Who do you got for the Redskins? I can't read that.
Redskins stink. That's what it says.
That's what it is.
So you want to do the NFC South then, or are we doing the NFC North?
We'll go to the NFC North first.
Okay. So I'm going to just keep picking running backs because that's how I roll. Other candidates here, Devontae Adams, Delvin Cook. I mean, I threw in Adam Thielen. I don't really think he's a serious contender, but hey, you never know.
Justin
Crazy
Jefferson.
things happen. Whoever that is. David Montgomery, Allen Robinson, DeAndre Swift, Kenny Galladay. I'm still going with Aaron Jones. He's on a contract year this year, whether he's with the Packers or not. I like Aaron Jones. I do. People kind of write him off because they say he can't repeat what he did last season. But I think Matt LaFleur is committed to the run game. Honestly, Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon don't scare me. And it's one of those things. Aaron Jones is talented. The Packers are in win-now mode. Mm-hmm. You're going to play them. People overthink things like this. Aaron Jones is the most talented running back on that team. They want to win a championship. I mean, that's why you play the game. You're going to put your best back in there. Is he going to have 18 to 20 touchdowns this year? Probably not, but can he have 15? I mean, I really think that he can. I mean, he had more. I think he had 55 receptions last year. A lot of people don't talk about him being involved in the pass game. He keeps sliding down draft boards because of A.J. Dillon. And I just can't stress enough that, I mean, this isn't a team, in as much as you look at their draft and you say, hey, they're not trying to win now. I mean, they're still trying to win now. I mean, they were only a few games away from being in the Super Bowl last year. So, I mean, this is still a talented team. And not to mention, they might be more willing to run Aaron Jones into the ground because they might not be committing to him past this season. So, I mean, I still like Aaron Jones a lot. I think he's going to touch the ball. And like I said, Jamal Williams, A.J. Dillon. Maybe they're the future of the Packers, but for this year, they're trying to win with Aaron Jones.
Yeah, it's Aaron. I like Aaron Jones too. I think he does have a little bit of touchdown regression. It's one of those situations where every time you're looking for Aaron Jones, every time you're looking for number 33, they got 30 out there, and it's like, come on, what are you doing? Why is Jamal Williams out there? And that's
Just
the one.
runs the ball hard. I like the way that Aaron Jones runs. He's just like a hard no. I mean, he's quick too. He's not just a big guy that. I mean, he just hits the hole hard. And I hate seeing guys that dance around. So as good as Le'Veon Bell's been, but I hate watching him run because he dances around, and
I like his running style.
it's
I don't like it
different.
nowadays on the Jets, but I liked it. I liked watching him in Pittsburgh, and I just liked how he was just so hesitant and patient, and then finally
He
found his
needs a good
hole.
offensive line, though. He's not like Saquon where he can make his own hole. Le'Veon Bell needs to have a good offensive line to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that last year. I'm going to go with Kenny Galladay, and in our group chat, and actually in multiple group chats, we've been on a Matt Stafford kick for the last couple of days. But I mean, I picked Kenny Galladay before we even started talking about Matt Stafford. But all the points that were brought up about Matt Stafford is pretty much the reason why I picked Kenny Galladay. Through the 8 games that he played last year, he was on pace for basically to be QB3. I think it was 38 touchdowns and what was it, over 5,000 yards. And Kenny Galladay is a big reason for that. And they still got Marvin Jones there. Then this year they went out and got Geronimo Allison, and they still have Danny Amendola too.
Ooh, I love Danny.
Yeah, I don't like any former Patriots. Get out of here.
He's a former Ram then.
Okay, yeah, that's true. But Kenny Galladay, he's the number one there. He's gonna as long as Matt Stafford is in the game, and as long as he can stay healthy, and he hasn't really been an injured type quarterback. I think last year was one of his worst injuries, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I don't think he's missed many games outside of that. So he he actually is Matt Stafford's primary target, number one target. And as long as Matt Stafford is there and he's in the game, I think Kenny Galladay, he's going to get like 165 targets, and he's probably going to turn in 100 catches for 1,000 yards and some touchdowns, and just some touchdowns though. But I think that Kenny Galladay could be up there. It's not really when you think about the NFC North, you think about a lot of there's some good fantasy talent in there, but it's all like a lot of it's like defense, or not a lot of the talent, but a lot of, like, when you think of the NFC North, you think about defense mostly, whereas the next division that we're going to talk about, it's a lot of offense. But I think Kenny Galladay has a potential, especially in that division, with not a lot of like top tier guys outside of Devontae Adams, who's a first round fantasy pick, and Dalvin Cook. But with the recent news of him potentially holding out, his stock is dropping a little bit. Galladay might be the second best player in that division that's a non quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, overall, when I'm thinking about it, this might be the worst division in terms of secondary. And I'm going through my head now with the Packers. I think they probably have the best secondary in the division, but the Vikings have lost some pieces. The Bears' defense has struggled. I mean, the Lions added Okuda, but I don't know. They might, division wide, it might be the worst secondary of any division. And I want to quickly rain on the Kenny Galladay parade a little bit, because I mean, let me preface this. I mean, I love Kenny Galladay. I was all on board for Kenny Galladay, and when I started to look at his numbers a little bit when Matthew Stafford was playing, I actually get a little concerned. I mean, I think he's one of the most talented receivers just from a pure talent standpoint in the entire NFL. I think he's top 10. And I agree that Matthew Stafford can have a good season. I do think they're going to be a little more committed to the run this year. I think they did take 2 running backs in the draft, and they still have Kerryon there. So I think it's going to be a little more balanced than we've seen in the past. But the biggest thing I'm concerned with is when Matthew Stafford is playing quarterback, he targets Marvin Jones more. And I know that sounds silly to say out loud because Marvin Jones is nowhere near as good as Kenny Galladay. But there's something to be said when a quarterback has chemistry with a wide receiver. And I'm not saying that Matthew Stafford can't develop that with Kenny Galladay, but at this point in time, he actually has really nice chemistry with Marvin Jones. And I think when Matthew Stafford was in. Kenny Galladay, I want to say off the top of my head, was wide receiver 16 for the first 8 or 9 weeks that Stafford played. So yeah, I mean, still a solid player, but I'm really hoping they build that chemistry. But until then, I think Marvin Jones is still an underrated pick overall, and I think Kenny Galladay is getting a lot of hype. But I think if they don't build that chemistry, he won't be as successful as people think.
All right, fine, fair points. I'm still sticking with Kenny. All right, we got 2 more divisions to go. We're a little bit over our time limit, but we got to get through these 2 divisions. So as we talking about, there's talent in the NFC North, but if you want some fantasy talent, you got to go to the NFC South. They got 1,000 players in that division that all are fantasy relevant, and you got a nice list going on there. Who's your guy that's not McCaffrey? Let me put it that way.
Okay, well, let's not even do this then. No, I mean, I'll go over a few. I mean, obviously, Michael Thomas. Don't think he's going to have as many receptions as last year. You have Kamara. Yeah, okay. We have Todd Gurley, who's in the division now. Julio, Calvin Ridley, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore. I mean, so there's a ton of great names in this division. I'm going to go with my underdog is DJ Moore, my first non-running back.
Oh, okay, all right.
The reason that I like DJ Moore a lot this year is I think he's going to fit in perfectly with Teddy Bridgewater's style and Joe Brady's offensive system. And I think DJ Moore is going to catch over 100 passes this year. And I wouldn't be surprised. This is getting a little crazy, but he'd be my underdog candidate to lead the league in receptions, just because I think it's going to be a high-volume, high-octane offense that they're trying to just get the ball out of Teddy Bridgewater's hands quickly. He's not going to hold on. He's not going to be indecisive. It's going to be nice, quick routes, and that's DJ Moore's style. He's not really a downfield threat. I mean, he's more of a, you run a 10-yard in, he catches the ball. He's a good yard-after-catch player, but he's not going to run a fly 30 yards down the field very often. So I think he's a candidate actually to lead the league in receptions. So I would go with DJ Moore as my underdog candidate.
I love it. I absolutely love DJ Moore. He's probably one of my favorite wide receivers now. Dave, if you end up listening to this podcast, DJ Moore, listen to this guy, Jordan. He knows what he's talking about. But
just this time.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with a guy with that you could just solely say his first name and you know exactly who you're talking about, and that's Julio. I think that he's been one of the best wide receivers in the league since basically he came into the league. Him and Matt Ryan, they're one of the top duos that you can think about between a quarterback and a wide receiver. He's definitely he's starting to drop a little bit in drafts. I think we just did a mock draft the other day and he went to the early third round, I think it was. He was either the second or third pick of the third round, and that's just common. Crazy. That's crazy for a guy all he is a year older. I mean, he still can catch the ball with the best of them. He can still run routes with the best of them. He's still a threat every position that you put him on the field. He's still the number one guy that's getting taken down because of pass interference calls, and I notice that all the time every time I'm watching an Atlanta Falcons game, because I have Julio Jones on a lot of teams, it's like you don't get those points for pass interference against you, and it sucks. But it's like long shot down to Julio Jones and flag, and it's like what the hell. But I think that they have a really high octane, heavy offense there. They brought in Todd Gurley. They did lose Austin Hooper, but they brought in Hayden Hurst. But the wideouts are still Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley, I think, is going to take a step up this year. But you can't count out Julio Jones. Every time you compare, like for the past 10 years or so, every time you said who's the better receiver, X or Julio, but it's always Julio that's on the other side of that conversation. So he's the common factor. He's one of the best in the league, and I think that Atlanta, they're going to put up a lot of points, and Julio Jones is going to be a huge reason for it.
Yeah, I wrote about that in my QB rankings. I think their defense is awful, and I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot and put up points to win any games. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can't think of a wide receiver that's more disrespected. And, I'll take responsibility for this as well. I think we underappreciate Julio quite a bit. And one of the weirdest things to me is he has this stigma that he's injury prone. but I mean, he plays through it. I mean, I have his stats up right now. I mean, you look at his games played in his career. I mean, 15, 16, 16, 14, 16, 15, 16. I mean, he had one season where he played 5, but we always label him as injury prone, but I mean, he's playing, so
Yeah.
why are we doing that? I mean, one of the concerns, I guess you could say, he's had some foot injuries, and that kind of worries me as a wide receiver. That your routes probably aren't going to be as clean. But I mean, he's so big, I don't really know
He
if it
doesn't need
matters.
it.
He just has size. But I mean, I think he's one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver of this generation. He probably is going to go above Antonio Brown now that Antonio Brown went off the rails. So it was between those two most likely if you wanted to go from 2010 to 2020. So but I think Julio's right in that conversation, and I think he's just we disrespect. And you could argue that with Calvin Ridley improving and getting better. I mean, Julio used to always face double teams because who did they have there? I mean, they had nobody next to him, and all of a sudden you have a very serviceable guy in Calvin Ridley who I think has number one receiver ability, taking some of the pressure off of him. So, and that's something Julio hasn't really had before. So, I mean, I could argue that less targets, he's going to make more out of them because there's less attention on him.
Yeah, they haven't had anybody since Roddy White, I think it was, and then
Michael Jenkins and Roddy White.
he's had a couple, like his touchdowns haven't really been up
No.
there. What did he have last year? The year before it
He
was
had
terrible,
6.
right? Like 3 or so.
He had 6 the last year, 8 the year before, 3 the year before that. So it was 2 years ago. He had 3. Not 2017. He had 3 touchdowns.
Okay, because he went like a long span without getting a touchdown. He'd had all these 100-yard games and all these catches, but he went a long span without.
1,400 yards.
Yeah, how do you have that many yards and no touchdowns? But I mean, it's still with all those catches and all that. I mean, that's 140 fantasy points right there, just in yardage. But yeah, I mean, if you're drafting right now, and you want a wide receiver, all the good running backs are gone. I'm sure Julio isn't your first choice, but I mean, if you want to take him with your first choice as your wide receiver one, there's definitely no issue with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Going on to the final division here, the worst division in football. Actually,
God.
they're not the worst. They just have one really. They just have the worst team in football. That's the NFC West. I mean, the Cardinals are good, the Niners are good, and the Seahawks are good, and I don't even know the other team. Were they the Sheep? Is that what it is?
I mean, they might as well be.
The Los Angeles Sheep.
I mean, as much as I don't think the Rams are going to be good this year, it's one of the only divisions I could probably argue everyone can finish with a winning record this year.
Oh man, you know what? You might be right. I know I had one division that was like that. No, that was the AFC West. Yeah, the AFC West. I think you could have all 4 with a winning record.
You could argue that. Yep. You could argue that. I mean, this is an interesting division. It's kind of been known in the past as a defensive division, and it's kind of funny when you look at it now. I mean, you have Kyler Murray with Cliff Kingsbury there and their high octane offense. You have Russell Wilson. The Rams run they have a lot of yardage. They're not very good, but the Rams they put up points and they can move the ball. So I mean, you still have the 49ers who are more ground and pound, but this has been a division kind of known for their defense in the past. So it's interesting now to kind of see the switch over. There's a lot of candidates in here. And I kind of am going back and forth even right now on who I want to pick. I think Raheem Mostert's going to be better than people think. Not my selection. I also think that the 49ers are an underdog candidate to sign Devontae Freeman because he has had some success under Kyle Shanahan. So I think that's an interesting fit there if they would like to put up a few dollars for him. Devontae Freeman's eventually going to have to cave in and understand he's not that good anymore.
How mad would Coleman be?
Oh my gosh. I'm back. That would be kind of funny. But I think Mostert, if the running back situation stays the same, is going to be better than people think. Jerick McKinnon and Tevin Coleman don't scare me. I'm not going to go with anybody on the Seahawks. I don't trust Chris Carson or any of their running backs enough. Tyler Lockett and Metcalf will put up their stats. But I'm kind of between Kenyon Drake and Cooper Kupp. I've gone between both of them. I think Kenyon Drake's going to have a nice season, but I'm going to go with a Rams player here. I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp just because I believe that's Jared Goff's guy. I think the Rams defense is going to struggle quite a bit this season. I mean, they have Aaron Donald, who's probably the best. I think he's the best defensive player in the league, and I've heard some people argue that he's not, but whatever. We're not here to debate that right
Yeah, this
now.
isn't a defensive players show.
How lame! Nobody likes IDPs. I like IDPs for the record. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the Rams defense is going to struggle this year. Their secondary has some weaknesses. They have really nobody in their linebacking core anymore. I think Corey Littleton's underrated, one of the worst losses for any team in the NFL this offseason. He was very good for them last year and really didn't get signed for a lot to the Raiders. So I think they're going to have to put up a lot of points. I've kind of mentioned before, I think Jared Goff could have a Jameis Winston kind of season where the Rams are really bad and he throws for 5,000 meaningless yards, kind of like Jameis did last year. I really could see him doing that because I don't trust their running game yet. I hope Cam Akers develops and gets to have a jersey on my wall as the next great Rams running back of this generation. But I'm not quite there with Cam Akers yet. So I think they're going to have to pass a ton. So Cooper Kupp is Jared Goff's guy. He trusts them. Cooper Kupp is a yard after catch monster. Gets lots of targets, lots of red zone targets as well. So I think that he would be my number one right now.
All right. Do you think Jared Goff has needs eye surgery like Jameis Winston did?
Maybe he should get it right now because he's got time.
All right, I'm gonna go with the Rams. Kyler Murray's newest weapon, his new best friend DeAndre Hopkins, and I mean it's a lot of the same reason for Julio Jones is going to be for DeAndre Hopkins. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league today. He's done a lot up until he had Deshaun Watson. He hasn't really had any good quarterback play, and he's done a lot with a little for his whole career. And now he goes from having Deshaun Watson to having Kyler Murray, who's like the next big thing here. The only thing that scares me on that offense is the same thing that scares me in Denver. Is the same thing that scares me in Kansas City is just a lot of offensive firepower. But DeAndre Hopkins, he's gonna get his. He could be up there as the wide receiver one by the end of the year when everything is all said and done. Just in not necessarily receptions, but yardage and touchdowns, he could be up there. I've mentioned this on a couple of our lives too before. Mahomes going into his second year was just phenomenal. That's when he had the 50 touchdown season. Lamar Jackson last year, that was his second year. His full second year, he had 36 touchdowns, ended up winning MVP. Now it's Kyler Murray's turn. So even if the ball spread around to guys like Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, getting it to Kenyon Drake out of the backfield, whoever is their tight end out there, if Kyler Murray has a year not like Patrick Mahomes, 'cause I don't think that's going to be duplicated, but a year between like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, then Hopkins is going to be a big reason because of it. And I think that he has the potential. I mean, we already know that he has the potential just as a player that he is, but I think that he has the potential to be the league's leading wide receiver by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray has a reputation for whatever reason, and I don't know if it goes back to Oklahoma, but I mean, people for whatever reason kind of put him in that Lamar Jackson category, a guy that needs to work on his mechanics and throwing. But I mean, if you watch Kyler Murray throw the ball, I mean, he has a quick release, and it's impressive. I mean, he has a cannon for an arm. And the Cardinals' offense is all about running as many plays as possible and spreading the ball around. So, I mean, that's DeAndre Hopkins will probably have less targets than he's ever had in his career, going back to probably his rookie season was when Andre Johnson was still around. But he hasn't really had to share with really many other targets in Houston, so that's going to be a little different for him. I think he's being overdrafted right now, but that's a whole nother conversation. But in the end, I think when you look at it within the scope of the division, I mean, the Cardinals want to just keep running plays as quickly as possible. That's what that offense is all about. And, so that's volume and opportunity right there for Hopkins. So as much as he won't put up numbers maybe similar to what he's had in the past, compared to other players in this division, he's going to put up big numbers and he's going to have lots of opportunity.
No doubt. So there you guys have it. Those are all of our non-quarterback guys that we think could lead the division in their respective divisions in points. A lot of good names on here. A lot of names that you're seeing drafted within the first. I mean, of all the guys that we mentioned, I think the latest guy drafted could be somebody like who Cooper Cup, David
Yeah,
Johnson maybe.
yeah, probably
Everybody
Dave.
else is being drafted within like the first 3 rounds, 4 rounds.
Stephon Diggs, maybe.
Yeah, Diggs, Cup, and David Johnson all being drafted a little bit later, but for the most part, even like your runner ups and all your honorable mentions, they're being drafted within the top 4 or 5 rounds. So it's is it kind of a is it kind of cheating just talking about all the good players from each team? Maybe, but I mean, like at the end of the day, I mean, quarterbacks they do tend to score a lot of points. If we were to add quarterbacks in here, we might have said somebody like Patrick Mahomes. We might have even said somebody like Tom Brady, even in that division with all that offensive firepower. So we wanted to try to leave them out of here. But there you have it. I know this show ran a little long, about twice the time that I wanted it to, but the other shows aren't going to be this long, and if you stuck with us this far, then we definitely appreciate it. And there's going to be a lot more shows going on, and we're going to try to get these out once or twice a week. But Jordan, do you have anything to end with, or before I close us out?
No, I appreciate everybody that listened. I'm looking forward to trillions of episodes in the future. So
Trillions.
make sure you check us out and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on all our audio platforms as well: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, all those fun platforms. I got lots of content going up on the fantasymafia.com. And if you don't already, make sure you like us on Facebook. But lots of stuff coming out. We're excited about the future, and we appreciate you coming along for the ride.
Yes, so Jordan pretty much covered it all at the beginning of the show and just now. Just check out our pages, check out our social medias, our Twitters, our YouTube, the website, and yeah, we got plenty of shows for you planned.